So another thing that I was doing wrong was that I was doing quite exhausting training first thing in the morning, so exhausting exercise. What I realized is that weightlifting, like the standard weightlifting routines, they're actually really bad for your productivity. Like a lot of like big bodybuilders and weightlifters say this. Derek from More Plates, More Dates says this. Alex Samosi says this, that if you lift weights, like heavy weights in the morning, you feel quite spent for like hours or maybe even the entire day afterwards. So Dr. Huberman says this as well in his podcast, that if you work out for like 60, more than 60 minutes, 75 minutes, you start to kind of lose like your health and your energy for the rest of the day. I've actually found that I think this is literally just with weightlifting, because I still use weights, but I do a different kind of workout now that impacts, which it's kind of like a HIIT kettlebell kind of work, you know, the kettlebell like equipment, the weighted like cannonball thing, kettlebell. So I use them instead in more of like a HIIT training where I get sweaty, but I'm probably still making gains because you're still like moving weight in, you know, like a moderate rep range. But that seems to actually affect my productivity like nowhere near as much as like a heavy weightlifting session used to in the morning. And this is what I used to do back then. And after you've hit the gym, it's like, at least for me and the work that I used to try and do back then, or the work that I've often done in this like business with YouTube, I've always found that really hard to do after a big session. So this was just another thing that I was doing wrong back then. Then another thing is that I had poor focus when I was actually trying to do the work. So if you imagine in 2019, I want to be a dropshipper or, you know, online entrepreneur, and I didn't know anything about like focus and good principles for productivity. So literally what I'd do is like, I'd, you know, be on my laptop doing some cope work, like, oh yeah, just thinking of the logo that I should have for my website, or, you know, some useless task that's not even important, which some people will think, wait, but the logo is important. No. We're going to talk about some like important things you need to learn, but like the logo and the channel banner and stuff, these things aren't important. And this is what I was trying to do. But instead of just focusing it and, you know, just getting it checked off straight away, I'd do it whilst like listening to a song, or I do it whilst, you know, my phone's on loud and I check my notifications, or, you know, stop halfway to change the music, or stop halfway to like go and eat or something. And I didn't realize that you're supposed to keep your focus through the entire like work session, and that in fact work should be divided up into sessions, into blocks. I didn't actually realize this at this time, and we'll go further into that. And there's just a few more things that I was doing wrong. And these ones are really interesting, which I've not actually seen many people talk about. So one of them, it was the weird psychology that I had at the time, which I don't have anymore, which was that I was just fresh out of the education system. And this is something that not a lot of people actually speak about, but the reason why it feels very difficult to do your work, especially when you leave school, is that for pretty much most of your life, the only time that you've actually done some kind of work is because an authority figure, like a teacher, has told you to do that work. So then when you try and make it out on your own, when you try and become an entrepreneur, or you try and level up in your career before you've, you know, got the job, or you're trying to do extra outside of your work hours, and you want to be like an entrepreneur or something, you're trying to do the work, you'll struggle without really knowing why. And the reason why is because you don't have the accountability that a teacher used to put on you. And that makes it sound a little bit wholesome, like, oh, you don't have the accountability. But like, I view it a bit worse. We got conditioned to be we got conditioned to be workers who simply just did what they're told. They conditioned you so that you only really could work when you've been told to do so by an authority figure. And so this is why the transition from the education system to entrepreneurship is actually quite difficult, because you've never had to do the work by yourself. You've always had homeworks, and you've had a teacher guiding you and telling you what to do. That's what you're trained for. You're trained to be an employee. But even if you don't want to be an average employee, if you want to like really excel in your career and get like a career that makes over 100 grand per year, you can't just do the work that like your boss tells you. You've got to impress them. You've got to do more work outside of your work hours. And most guys will struggle with that and never actually make it, because of this weird psychology that's been conditioned in us that we only do work when some authority figure tells us. You have to become that authority figure. Like, you have to become daddy and like tell yourself what work you're going to do. And this transition period took me a while to get through.